consensual. So the big discussion today has now turned to consent.
And what is the responsibility of everyone involved? We bring in attorney and legal analyst Anahita Sedaghatfar. Anahita, thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you.
It's a little murky now, the roles of men and women and how you can explicitly give consent. What is your advice as an attorney?
It's very murky. And let me just say, whether or not what he did falls into the category of sexual assault or rape, whether or not it rises to the level of criminality, that's a misguided discussion. You talked about it in the introduction. We have to discuss what consent means these days, right? So I would venture to say you don't just look at whether or not the person is saying yes or saying no. If the person is telling you, I'm uncomfortable, if the person is moving your hands repeatedly off of her breasts like this woman did, if she's repeatedly moving her hands off of your crotch area, if she's trying to get away from you, that is coercion, that is not consent, and that is what we should be focusing on here.
What's your advice to men who need to understand what's going on in a dating situation? Do they have to get a verbal consent, do you think?
It's not just verbal. It's very complicated, right? No. Every situation is different, but don't just look to see whether or not the woman uses the word no or uses the word yes. You have to look at the body language. Like this woman was saying, I gave him every clue that I could give him. I kept trying to move away. He kept trying. He kept persisting.
But she didn't say no. She talks about nonverbal cues.
Right.
Does she have an obligation to say, hey, listen, please stop, I'm leaving, or maybe excuse herself and pretend to go to the bathroom but walk out the door?
That would be ideal, but that's not reality, and that's part of this discussion is how do we define consent? How do we know what is right, what is wrong, how far a man or even a woman can go in these situations? And again, there's no bright line rule, but it's really important that we're having this discussion.
I don't know if you saw Liam Neeson's comments recently where he said that he thought there was a bit of a witch hunt going on right now between women in Hollywood specifically. What do you see as the woman's role of responsibility in all this? Because it is a delicate conversation that we're having, right, and yet it's your body, your personal rights and personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
So how do you see this role defined for men and women?
It's a tough one because I do believe in personal responsibility as well, but I don't believe we blame women. I don't think we should victim shame. And for Aziz, I don't blame him. I think he truly did believe the encounter was consensual. So he apologized right away before it even went public. I really condone the fact that he did that. But part of the Me Too movement, it's not just about forcible rape, right? It's about gender roles. It's about the way we as a society view sex. It's about all of these issues. So yes, personal responsibility, no to victim shaming and victim blaming.
Now, this all came to light after the awards show because the Time's Up pins were worn by some of the men in the room, I guess all the men in the room, to support the women. But then after he wins and he has this great moment in his career, then he's called out later. So once again, what do you think this does to the public discourse?
That's tough because a lot of people are questioning this woman's motives, but we know, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a mental health expert, but women in these situations, oftentimes they freeze. They can't say no, they can't speak out right away, and it's not until after that it really hits them that they were violated, and I think that's what happened in this particular case. So I don't want to victim blame. I don't want to say, why didn't she come out sooner? Is she just coming out now to get her 15 minutes of fame? She has not even said her name yet. So we don't know. We don't know the exact facts, but we don't want to victim blame. And we want to encourage women to come forward. Sometimes it takes years, as we've seen with the Harvey Weinstein accusers. That's just the nature of sexual assault. That's the nature of rape.
There was an article, I believe, written by a woman, and none of us were there, but the suggestion was maybe it was consensual at the time, and then after the fact, maybe she didn't get what she wanted. Maybe she wanted a real relationship, wanted to be the girlfriend of this very successful actor, and maybe he wasn't affectionate enough, and then she kind of started to feel bad about what she had done after the fact.
I've heard that too. I'm not a great proponent of that argument because as far as we know, Aziz has not disputed the facts as she set them forth. And I think what's so interesting is that so many women can relate to this particular situation. I mean, this story has gotten so much publicity because of that. Women have been in situations where they feel coerced into engaging into sexual activities, where they can't say no, they're afraid to leave, they don't want to anger the man. So I think that's really what the discussion needs to be about. And again, the broader discussion about what is or is not consent. We can't look for a bright line rule. We can't just look for the woman or even the man to give the yes or no verbs. Read the body language. I mean, at some point when, like this woman said, she repeatedly said, you know, I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel good. Can we do this another time? At some point,
I'm sorry. I don't think she ever said that.
she says
She
that
said
she did.
she said that he ignored her clear nonverbal cues. I don't want to.
Right.
But
She admits she never said no. She does admit that, but she does say that she told him she felt uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
I
at
didn't
one
realize
point she
that.
said she went to the bathroom, she came out and said, look, can we save this maybe for the second date? So I think the cues were there. I'm not blaming Aziz Ansari. I truly believe his statement that he didn't feel he was doing anything wrong or crossing the lines. And again, this is not a sexual assault. It's not a rape. It's really just an issue of possibly an abuse of power situation or a misreading as to what is or is not consent.
Anahita, thank you so much for your thoughts today. We are out of time. I'm sure we could go on for hours on this topic. Thanks. We'll see you soon.